Hey everybody, TYT Sports, Ben Mankiewicz, Damian Carville with you. The big news today around the country, the decision in Baltimore to go ahead and prosecute 6 police officers related to the murder, the death of Freddie Gray, charges ranging from second-degree homicide all the way down to false imprisonment and many things in between. Obviously, this is a news story, but because of the effect that it's had on the Baltimore Orioles, because of Carmelo Anthony, because of Ray Lewis, there's a sports component to this. And there is always, it seems now, often a sports component to these national stories. We'll talk a little bit about how it might be different in Europe in a moment. But first, to catch you up on all this, here is the state's attorney for the city of Baltimore, Marilyn Mosby, making the announcement that charges will be filed against the police officers in Baltimore.
The findings of our comprehensive, thorough, and independent investigation, coupled with the medical examiner's determination that Mr. Gray's death was a homicide, which we received today, has led us to believe that we have probable cause to file criminal charges.
All right, so there you have it. Marilyn Mosby, Baltimore City State's attorney, announcing the charges. Now, earlier this week, Damian, we saw, first at the beginning of the protest, you saw Ray Lewis, who spent his entire career playing for the Baltimore Ravens, sort of memorably telling people to remain peaceful. And then also Carmelo Anthony, who's from Baltimore, the great Knicks player. I'm using the word great really liberally. He's a great player. And he sort of tweeted out his thoughts on the issue. And some of the comments that we got following those videos were that, hey, these guys and their ivory towers and their, these guys are multimillionaires. Carmelo Anthony signed a max contract with the Knicks. Ray Lewis made, tens of millions of dollars, maybe more counting endorsements, maybe hundreds of millions, maybe $100 million with the Ravens. They don't represent the people. I don't agree with that. I don't know what these guys are supposed to do. Ray Lewis was adopted, but he's not from Baltimore. He went to college in Miami. I think he's from Florida. But he adopted the city of Baltimore, became his own. Carmelo Anthony came from Baltimore, went to Syracuse, now an NBA star. I love to see these players get involved with the communities that have been a part of their lives.
Sure. I think that you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't, these guys. The fact that you've made millions and millions of dollars as a sports person doesn't mean that you don't have the right to have an opinion.
Totally. That's right.
As a sports fan, I want my heroes and athletes to stand for something.
Yeah, me too.
Spending hard-earned money, a lot of money on these guys, I want them to represent me inside and outside of the game.
And so conversely, when they don't, when they represent values that I find abhorrent, it makes it almost impossible for me to root for them. I mean, I grew up a fan my whole life of the Washington football team. Now, I'm not just being cute and not naming the name because I don't think we should. I think it's offensive. I said it for many years. But since I was about 30, me and my friends regularly were like, his name is horrible. Like, what were we thinking, right? But I could still stand to be a fan if not for the owner, whose name I also don't want to say. But Dan Snyder's the worst owner in sports. And
sure.
Here on TYT Sports, I cut up a Redskin, oh, there I go. I cut up a Redskin hat on to sort of, because this guy had ruined the team for me. And he did. And the same way that if a stridently anti-gay athlete were starring for my team, I would have a very, very hard time rooting for them. So when these guys do the right thing, I think it's great. But now, before we talk more about this, and we'll wrap this up in a second, it's as if Carmelo Anthony read those comments too, because Carmelo Anthony, who has WB for West Baltimore tattooed on him, I think it's the only tattoo he has, took to the streets of Baltimore earlier in the week before the indictments were handed down, or the announcement that indictments were coming down. Carmelo Anthony took to the streets and he talked to CNN about why he was out there.
All right, yes, Carmelo Anthony with the crowd here. Obviously, there's something close to your heart. Why did you decide to lead and be a part of this march this afternoon?
This is my community, but it's not also my community. It's everybody's community. It's America's community. So for me to come back here and be a part of, a community where I grew up at, and really get a chance to kind of talk to the people and get a feel for what's going on, I had to come. It was only right for me to come down here.
I see it in your face. You're basically walking by yourself here. You've talked to people. What does that mean to be here with everybody?
I was one of them, you know. So when I come back home, it's all love. Everything is cool. But I'm here for a different cause right now, man. I'm supporting my community. You know, I'm here to talk to the youth about, you know, kind of calm things down here in the city, man. We shouldn't tear our city down. We got to rebuild our city. Like, we gonna get the justice that we want. It's gonna take some time. It's gonna take some time. So my message to everybody is just calm down. Let's just kind of be patient. I know that's easier said than done right now, to be patient, but we have to be patient in order for us to get what we want.
Is it, you know, Carmelo Anthony, the kind of athlete that, without knowing really anything about him, was easy for me to dislike. Took too many shots. Didn't seem to make his teammates better. I don't know whether that's really true. Take too many shots thing's sort of unquestionably true, although sometimes he can make them. But he's like Carmelo Anthony is now permanently okay for me. Sure. Like, that's it. That's it. And he's right. Like, how are you supposed to criticize a guy just for, okay, he signed a $100 million contract. He's still from Baltimore. Like, you should applaud that. This is exactly what we should praise. You know, I'm a huge Bruce Springsteen fan. And there is a certain segment of the Springsteen population, some who thought, like Born in the USA, which Ronald Reagan, you know, you're not from this land, but we used to have a president named Ronald Reagan. And he, and he co-opted Born in the USA because it seemed like a patriotic song. And in some ways it is a patriotic song, but not in that way. It's sort of indictment of the way we treated Vietnam veterans. But when you go to a Springsteen concert, there is a certain segment of the fandom which thinks whenever he starts talking about politics, which he does for like a grand total of 3 minutes a concert. Like, you know, some of the songs, of course, are political. They want him to shut up and play. And I think, hey, man, then you're not really a fan if you want him to shut up and play. That's not, this is part of what you get, right?
I totally agree. Again, I want my people to stand for something. You know, I'm from Liverpool. In 1995, we had a pretty big labor dispute. 500 longshoremen or dockers were fired for refusing to cross a picket line. And there was a media blackout on this. It was, you know, this was England in the 90s as a follow-on from Ronald Reagan's former wife, Margaret Thatcher's Britain. And,
former wife.
And Liverpool scored a goal. And two of the players, one called Steve McManaman, who later played for Real Madrid, one called Robbie Fowler, they pulled up their Liverpool shirts and they revealed a T-shirt in support of the sacked dockers. And they got fined. You get fined if you do this in Europe.
Yeah, thankfully, you don't seem to be doing that here. You know, the St. Louis Police Union, those guys criticized the St. Louis Ram players, 4 of them, receivers, maybe 5 of them, who walked out, not walked out, but walked into the stadium when they were introduced with their hands up.
Sure.
In sort of respect for the community in Ferguson and for Mike Brown. And I thought that was great. The cops went nuts and suggested even that we won't defend the stadium. Just
to come back to your point on it, you know, Liverpool is for my entire existence the nemesis team. I can't like anything about Liverpool, but these 2 guys who stood up in support of, by the way, my father was one of the sacked dockers, so it was very meaningful to me on a personal level, but also they just stood up for something. I'll forever like these guys, and I'll forever respect them as a result.
I hear you. That's great. Did your dad get his job back?
No, they didn't. They, you know, essentially, like most labor disputes, it's the big man wins, but it was a fantastic journey of solidarity. It was good for the city to some extent. It was good for us as a family, and you know.
Do you think there's more? That's 20 years ago. Do you think there's more cynicism now here and in Europe that? In 1995, I'm sure those Liverpool players were well compensated. They're much better, significantly. I mean, the salaries for European soccer have gone through the roof in 20 years. So now to see a couple of athletes raising their shirts to support fired dockers. We say fired here, not sacked, okay? Just in case anybody didn't understand. Everything you guys say is cool. It's just for the sacked dockers. That's a... I suspect there might be more cynicism for it now. While there's more sort of social awareness now, I think they might be more vilified for it. Like same thing here, like with Carmelo Anthony initially. Like, how dare? What do you know?
Sure.
What do you know about real lives?
You know, I think there's no doubt that the players are further removed from the people nowadays in every sport for the reasons that you described. So I think there will be more cynicism. But one thing I think is worth mentioning is Pep Guardiola, the coach of Bayern Munich, formerly of Barcelona.
Yeah.
He recently did a press conference and he had a T-shirt that said "Justicia para Topo," justice for Topo, which is an Argentinian journalist who was killed during the World Cup. And you know, he's trying to get a You know, they're trying to get this sort of case brought to court and tried, and he got fined for it, but he was willing to take a chance. Pep Guardiola has a lot of money, and I think it's just great when people take a stand, and I think people should relate to it.
I want my people to stand for something. I like that. I'm going to use it. Damien Carville, Ben Mankiewicz, thanks very much.